Hello, folks. Welcome back to today's episode of the Bible. Wait, what? Hello, Jeanie.
Hello.
Again.
Yes, I'm still here.
Last one, Friday's episode, Luke 7.
Yes, and I have to apologise because this is going to be very short. And it's going to be a record, my shortest chapter
It
ever
will be your
done.
shortest chapter ever. Okay, let's
Yes,
go.
I have to literally be out of this building in 16 minutes.
16 minutes, okay.
Yeah, so
Good.
I apologise that we're not going through this as...
Lots of other episodes have been 16 to
Yeah.
20 minutes, so don't worry, let's do it.
Yeah, and we're going to come back to this next year, aren't we?
Oh, multiple times.
Yeah,
We'll
okay.
go through in great depth these stories the next year.
So in this chapter 7, we see Jesus performing a miracle on a Roman centurion slave.
Yep.
So he's reaching out to the Gentiles. He's
yep.
showing, and he's shocked by the Romans' faith because the Roman centurion, he wants Jesus to come to his house, and then he says, hang on a minute, you don't even have to come because I am a man who understands authority and I have teams of people working underneath me. You just have to say a command and that person will be healed. And Jesus is astounded by this Gentile's faith, and he actually just says yes. He heals him and doesn't go to the house, and it's done.
Yep.
Yeah, signed, sealed, and delivered
Yep.
without even turning up.
Yep.
That's the message of God going out and made available to everybody. It seems to me faith is a massive thing in this story.
Yeah, and in this case, it's mega pistis,
Yeah.
great faith.
Great faith.
It's faith that believes that God can heal at a distance, and this only happens twice in the New Testament, and both of them are Gentiles.
Does the other story happen in Luke?
It's the faith of the Syro-Phoenician woman whose daughter can be healed at a distance. She takes him at his word. Says Jesus was amazed at her great faith both times. Yeah, so I'm not sure if it's Luke's gospel, maybe Matthew's. I'm not sure, but it happens twice,
Happens twice.
and they're both Gentile women, Gentile man and Gentile woman. Yeah,
Okay.
and that's why he's amazed, because he didn't even see that kind of faith in all of Israel.
No.
No.
So the tide is turning. The
Yes.
story is going out
Yep.
for people. And here Luke is really making the point that Jesus has authority. He doesn't even have to turn up.
Yep.
So this is massive. The Messiah has some kind of greater authority than anybody else has ever seen.
Yep.
Yeah, which
Absolutely.
John the Baptist has hinted about.
He's indicated that, hasn't he?
Yeah, later on.
Yep.
And when these people see this miracle, the young man gets up. They all realize they're in a place of holy mystery, that God was at work within them, reading in chapter 6, verse 16 to 17. And then they worshipped him.
So this is the next story. This is 16 to 17 is when he's healed the women.
Oh, he had the woman,
So
yeah.
he actually healed two, the Gentile, the Centurion's servant, and then the woman's son who had died. This is a resuscitation, a raising from the dead story.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm so glad you reminded me of that.
Yeah.
So I want to point out there's a crowd with him, right?
Yeah.
And it's sort of a celebratory crowd.
Yep.
And they're moving into this next village. And this is the mixing of life
and
sadness.
death.
Yeah.
Yep.
He comes across a crowd where it's a funeral.
Yep. A procession of life meets a procession of death.
Yes. And she's a widow now. Her son has died because the son was the only way for her to make
Yep.
money. So she's also in poverty from this moment.
Yep.
And Jesus, in this one swoop, restores not only him back to life, but restores her entire livelihood.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he's treating the widow and the poor with kindness,
Exactly.
which is what the entire
Which is
scriptures
what it's all about.
tell
and
us
it's
to
certainly
do.
what Luke's telling us to do.
Yeah.
That's the main theme of Luke's
And he
gospel.
has such compassion, don't cry.
Yep.
And he brings him back to life, which
He
is
does. A miracle.
a major miracle. And that's when they're on holy ground. And I love this, how they writes it here. They were quietly worshipful, but then they were noisily grateful, calling out among themselves, God is back, looking
Yes.
to the needs of his people.
Yeah.
And that's what the Jewish people wanted. It's not like they just wanted, as we've talked about before, and I'm really changing my mind on this, it's not that they just wanted the Messiah to come in and conquer and take down and lead this sort of bloody revolution. It's that they want to see the Messiah looking after the needs of them.
Yes. Yeah. Because they saw David as that kind of king, a king who, the real king of Israel would be a king who would look out for the benefit of his people. That's what they expected. That's what David did. That's what Solomon did at his best, and that's what they were looking for in the Messiah, a king who would care for them.
Yes. And Jesus spends an extraordinary amount of time proving that he cares for the needs of the people.
Yep.
We saw it before in the previous chapter where the guy says, if you want to save, if you want to heal me, you can. And he says, I will.
Yep.
So who is this Jesus? He cares
It's incredible.
deeply.
And this is why it's understandable that at multiple times in the gospel narratives, we see the people wanting to scoop him up and make him king. They still want to make him king, not quite the way they wanted, but they understood there was something significant about him.
Yep.
But he was still not quite finished. He was still trying to show the way to be king was to go down, not to go up. You can't ascend your throne to you. His throne was the cross.
Yeah.
So that was the bit they hadn't figured out yet. They understood that God was for them. They understood Jesus was doing great things. This Messiah was doing beautiful things, but they did not understand what it was going to take to truly bring in the kingdom. It was going to cost him everything.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. And moving on here, John the Baptizer's disciples come to him, and he's already in prison at this point,
Yep.
John the Baptist. And they ask, are you the one? And then in the next 2 to 3 hours, Jesus shows them. He doesn't tell them he's the one, but he shows
Yep.
them by healing diseases, casting out evil spirits, and then many of the blind can see. And then he says to them, go back and tell John what you have seen and heard.
Yep.
Blame the blind see, the lame walk. So he's answering the messianic prophecies about himself.
Exactly.
He's proving that he is the guy.
And it doesn't actually list it in my Bible, which is interesting. But those blind seeing, lame walking, leprosy, good, dead raised, etc. That's actually a quote from. It's a quote from the Old Testament. It's a messianic quote from one of the prophets. But it doesn't seem to. It puts it in a quote, but it doesn't actually show it as an Old Testament quote. I'm sure it is, or an amalgamation of several of them. But the idea was basically, you know what the Messiah is looking for? The Messiah is going to heal leprosy, raise the dead, help the lame to walk and the blind to see. Look at this. This is what I've just shown you. Now go back and tell him what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It also, this part here, this story with the woman, it parallels another ancient story of Elijah. You know how he restored the life of a dead woman's
Yep.
son? Of a woman's dead son.
A woman's dead son, yep.
Yeah, and he came and lay on top of him and
Yep.
brought him back to life. Yeah. That's a weird story then, isn't it?
Very weird story, isn't it?
But this is the second time now you see Luke reminding you of stories from the...
Using Elijah
Yeah.
as that story. Yep, Old
Yes.
Testament stories, because they were going to be the fulfillments of what the Messiah would do.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and God is reaching out to the widow again.
Yep.
Yeah, constantly doing that. He's constantly showing you how he cares.
Got the weak and the vulnerable and the marginalised on his mind.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Where are we heading now?
I don't know, Jeanie. I'm not sure.
They messengers just go back and tell John the Baptist how amazing it is.
Yes. Yeah, and then he begins, after he sends the disciples back to John, he starts to teach them about John. He says, he just compares. He goes, what are you really looking for? You went out to John and he was not partying. He was trying to be an Essene, living this kind of hermit's life, and that was one thing. And you're complaining about him, and now I'm coming and I'm hanging out with sinners and you're complaining about me. Which do you want? He says, I love the way he puts it. He says, it's like we played wedding songs, the happy one, Jesus, and you didn't dance, and we played funeral songs, the sad one, like John the Baptist, and you didn't weep. So he's trying to contrast the two, and so you still don't get it, do you?
Yeah, he also says that no one in history surpasses John the Baptizer. Yeah. It's a
big call,
big
isn't it?
statement about
But in
him.
light of our conversation today over these last few episodes, I think it fits really well that we need to slow down and read that John the Baptist stuff in Luke 3 and realise that everything's flowing on from that in a way that I don't think I've ever seen before. That makes more sense of this, is why Jesus makes such a big call about him. And why Luke shows Jesus making a big call about him is because everything we've seen in chapters 4, 5, 6 and up to 7 here has been him working out what John said he would do in Luke 3. So thank you, Jeanie. That's been an eye-opener to me. I don't think I've ever seen that before.
And if you notice here now, we've had Jesus in the other previous chapter reading from the scroll of Isaiah, and he says the history is happening now. This section here this is a direct claim.
Yes.
An assertion, an establishment that he is the Messiah.
Yes, correct.
He doesn't say that like I am, but anybody reading this in the text would get this.
Yeah, they would
get
it.
Day.
Yep,
wow, he
totally.
is the Messiah.
Yep, absolutely. They would get that. Yep.
Yeah. And then it continues on. Pharisees ask him for a meal, to go to a meal.
Yep.
And he's not treated. The
He's not treated
Pharisee
well.
does not give him the hospitality one expects when you go to a person's house.
That's correct.
But instead, a woman, a harlot, as this Bible calls her here,
Okay.
she comes along and anoints his feet with the most expensive perfume ever. And Jesus makes a point of showing how differently they treat him.
Yep.
Yes. And he forgives her sins.
He forgives her sins. Yep. And then he uses a parable because all the Pharisee can do, Simon the Pharisee can do, is sit in judgment on this quote unquote sinful woman. And he uses a parable to explain that, the one who has had the larger debt cancelled is the one who loves the most. And that's her. You weren't even aware you had a debt. You were just self-righteous for that, Simon, but she gets it. She's been forgiven of much. Yep. That's the point he's trying to make. Contrasts the religious, self-righteous one with this broken woman.
He's also here showing you how involved he is in a person's life, because by making these statements about this woman, it's like he knows what she's done. He knows everything that she's done. And he still sits with her. He still allows her to touch him. I assume he's touched her at this moment. He's definitely touched her heart. But he's sitting with her in her grief, and he's not telling her to leave or anything. Just sitting there. And he's not chastising. He's not condemning, anything like that. He's just setting her free.
Yeah. He's allowing her to be set free as she weeps at his feet. Isn't it amazing?
Yeah. And we're seeing here what John the Baptist was talking about. He didn't explicitly say it, but he meant it when you see the tax collector behaving fairly and the soldiers not
no
hurting
extortion
people.
and hurting. Yep.
You're also seeing Jesus treating the unlikable, the detestable person with love and honor.
You're seeing Luke 4, which is Isaiah 61, the captive being set free here.
Yeah.
Yep. Those held in prison.
Yeah. And so this woman is experiencing what John the Baptist told her was coming.
Yep. That's it. Yes, indeed she is.
Yeah.
Maybe she was in amongst those people on the fringes of the crowd that went to be with John. Who knows?
She might have been. She's definitely heard a lot about Jesus.
Yep, that's right.
She
Maybe
turns
her
up
heart was
here.
prepared as well.
And this guy might have been one of the brood of vipers that also got baptized.
Correct. Maybe so. Maybe so.
But his heart was not open to...
No, he wasn't ready.
No, he's not ready.
No, not at all.
But she doesn't even ask for anything. She just sits there and receives.
She gives her heart with this rich perfume, and her tears and her repentance is what she gives there, her sorrow at her life, and he responds to that change of her heart.
Do you think she's believing in the impossible?
She wouldn't imagine the fear that she would have had walking into that crowd, even if she knew Jesus was going to accept her. Imagine even then what she would think of these others at the table. They didn't accept her. She pushed through the crowd.
Is she coming boldly before the throne
very
of
boldly
God?
Thrown, isn't it? Amazingly bold to come into that environment with thanks and gratitude. Yep.
Yeah. What an upside down world.
Incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
That's Jesus for us. All right, you got to go, Jeanie.
I do have to go.
All right.
I very much enjoyed this.
I think that might have been a record
conversation.
for you.
It is a record, and
I've never done a chapter that quickly.
I'm
in my
kicking
entire
myself
time.
because there's so many things I wanted to talk
Next year we'll
about.
go into more depth. All right, everybody. Thanks for being with us this week. We'll talk to you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeanie. Thanks for listening to this episode of The Bible. Wait, what? Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast so you don't miss a single episode. And you can also find us on all the socials. Just search The Bible. Wait, what? And to find out more about our church, just search C3 Camden, C3 Picton, or C3 Thirroul on the web or on the socials. Thanks for being with us today, and we look forward to talking to you on the next episode of The Bible. Wait, what?